Late is a brand new book that just came out by Colleen Hoover. Now, I put brand new in air quotes because it's not actually brand new. It was just officially released for the first time. Initially, she started writing this 15 years ago because whenever she would get writer's block, essentially, she'd pause the real book that she was working on, and then she'd write a chapter of this, and then she would release it chapter by chapter online. And it was really only now that she was able to actually officially publish it. So if you go to the stores right now, bookstores, Walmarts, Targets, Myers, wherever you go, you will see this on a front-facing shelf. Now, if you're not familiar with Colleen Hoover specifically, she's pretty popular in terms of romance books. For the last couple of years, I've read a handful of her stories, and usually I will agree that they're well done. She's really good at taking a story that is somewhat typical, somewhat predictable, and turning it on its head to at least feel incredibly original. Now, a lot of people have their own opinions on how each book ranks, which one's better than the last, but if I'm not mistaken, almost everybody agrees that her best story, the number one book, is Layla. And I'll definitely agree with that. If you don't know what Layla is, if you haven't seen it, haven't read it, go check it out. As far as books that I feel like need an adaptation into a movie, at least from Colleen Hoover, that would be the one. Not the one that they're working on right now, which is It Ends With Us, which is one of my least favorite of her books. It was fine, it was just mediocre in comparison to everything else she's done. The reason why I bring up Layla specifically is because it was different than everything else that she's written. Like I said, she's very popular in the romance field. But Layla was a thriller, a psychological thriller, and it was extremely well written. And I always really appreciate when an author does something a little bit different than what they're used to, challenges themselves to think outside the box, do something a little bit different. John Grisham wrote Skipping Christmas, the Christmas book, and he's also done a few baseball stories as well, aside from all of his vast expanse of legal thrillers out there. Colleen Hoover has Layla, but she also has Too Late, which is also a thriller, and it was the main reason why I was really interested in checking this one out, because I love Layla. Layla's fantastic. Too Late is not as good as Layla. A lot of people actually have Too Late on the bottom of the barrel as far as how they rank Colleen Hoover books. They think it's the worst. I don't know how they can go from thinking Too Late's the worst and Layla's the best. No, it's not written as well as Layla. No, the story's not as good as Layla. But again, Colleen Hoover, challenging herself, doing something she doesn't normally do, and I commend her on that. And not only that, I do actually like this book. To give you a quick rundown, this book is mostly about a drug dealer who, apart from just dealing drugs and being a criminal in general, is an awful human being, especially to his girlfriend, Sloane. He abuses her, he assaults her, he talks down to her, and he has this ego to him that he believes wholeheartedly that she loves him for it, that she'd never leave him because this is how he expresses love. And this is what love really is. He had a weird upbringing with his dad. At the same time, he's got a bunch of men in his home that help him on his various criminal activities, though the book doesn't really shine a ton of light on those activities. You just know that he has these men at his side. One of them is this guy named Carter, who, unbeknownst to the drug dealer's name's Asa, is actually a DEA agent undercover. And so, as you could probably predict at this point, Carter falls for Sloane, which is not very good for egomaniac and legitimate crazy pants Asa, who is just gonna, fly off the radars when he learns that Sloane might actually not be in love with him as he previously thought. To him, Sloane was the only person in his entire life to have ever loved him. What's really interesting about this book is that, yes, Asa is a terrible human being, but multiple times throughout the book, the characters, especially Sloane and Carter, sympathize with him. They're not going to forgive him. They're not going to say, oh, he's good at heart. They know he's bad, but they sympathize with him because of his upbringing being so tormented and stolen from his youth. So I found Asa to be a pretty developed character in the long run. I don't think Sloane or Carter were all that developed. Well, both of them had quick background stories to them that explained why they are the way they are, it wasn't as detailed and specific as Ace's story. And I really appreciated that, because we don't always get a villain that you can sympathize with and understand to a degree, even though you do hate him. That was one of the best things about this story. But as most people would tell you, it doesn't feel like a Colleen Hoover book. It doesn't feel like her writing style. It feels a little bit off. I will agree with that. It doesn't really feel like her. Anybody could have written this story. But the story itself is good. It was captivating. I read it within a few days, which on top of my busy schedule is lightning speed quick. And I'm glad that I saw this in the store and I picked it up, because it's right up my alley. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you are a fan of Colleen Hoover. I can't really say that I am a fan of hers, though I can't really think of a book that I've read of hers that I didn't like, other than one. The sequel to It Ends With Us, It Starts With Us, completely unnecessary. Completely. The entire book feels pointless. Nothing happens. Nothing adds to the original story. It's just a waste of time to read that. But everything else that I've read from her thus far, it's been solid, which I didn't really think I'd ever say about a romance author. So I'm always on the lookout for more Colleen Hoover books. There's a ton out there. I have not read even a fraction of how much she actually has, but I've read a good handful of them, and yeah, she's a strong, talented author. I definitely recommend you read at least one of her books. If it's only Layla, check that out. You don't need to read too late. I don't exactly recommend it. That being said, if you are a fan of thriller books, check it out anyways, because it's still a good book in general. It's just not so much Colleen Hoover. Other than that, guys, have you read Too Late? Are you a fan of Colleen Hoover? What's your favorite Colleen Hoover book? If it's not Layla, what is it? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with the next review. And until then, peace out.